seconds as far as the action goes. So if I rewind it again, you'll see from the time it starts to the time the main action is done, right about there, is about 4 seconds. And if you look at my frames over there, it's about 109 frames. So it's not terribly too long, okay? That's what we want. We don't have time to do a whole bunch of stuff. 7 seconds at Pixar takes 40 hours for an animator to do. We don't have 40 hours. We only have 3 weeks left to fit this one plus another one in, okay? So our first job here is to go to YouTube and find a cool video to use. There's a group of people called Fail Army, and they basically have fails, like loads and loads of fails. You can look for fail compilations. And go over this and find something that is short and sweet, okay? You also want to find something that can kind of really stand on its own without needing too many props. If I need 10 props for this fail to work, then it's going to be very tricky to get that across, because I have to have not only the animation of my character, but the animation of all the other stuff in there. And then you have to have, obviously, context. This one wouldn't be as funny if we didn't have the liquid, right? So in order to do that, we'd have to have the liquid in there. Then we'd also have to have this other guy in the video too, so now we're animating 2 people in it. And then if there's a lot of lead up time to it, you don't want that. I typically, I like to avoid things that have a lot of running in them, like a character running across the screen, because we don't do a cycle for that. That's just frame by frame run cycling. Yeah, even stuff like that. Yeah. And then search for something that's kind of complex. Boom. There you go. So something like that could work out perfectly. Let's just pretend we got that one. This one's kind of silly, but... There we go. So let's talk about that one real quick, because someone might pick something like that. So that one that we just saw with the big sling, not a whole lot of real animation going on. The only thing that's happening is the person is wrapped up, and you have basically this swinging motion, and then they fall down. That's not what we want to do. There's not enough complexity to show off how much animation stuff we have. Okay? Like I said, there's not a whole lot going on there. Now something like this one is really neat because the kid jumps up and he tries to hit the ball in there and it doesn't work, and then he turns around and it falls on his head. Boom. Okay, so really the only thing we're really animating is the thing falling on top of him on top of the kid animating. Something like that could work too. If you get into anything where there is the character flipping over or rolling or even just turning around 180 degrees, those are tricky things to do. So don't think that everything you're going to pick is going to be easy. Even stuff like this, to get it nice and smooth, is very tricky, and that's kind of boring because the action is this, not the character itself. Like I said, the character should kind of stand on his own, really. Could animate a cat if you're up for it. I would, yeah. Nikki's trying a cat, and then cats are hard to work with, so we moved on to a dog.
Oh, no. Oh, you did finish the cat. Oh, no.
Boom. Yeah, poor guy. Okay, so let's pretend that we find one in this compilation that we like, okay? So what we want to do is we want to grab this video. So there's a bunch of websites. I'm going to show the one that I usually go to first, which is KeepBid. Now, just because you're downloading it doesn't mean you own this video. All it means is that we're using it as reference. So we type in the URL there, we hit this download, and then over here we're going to download the maximum size. So in this case it's going to be 720p. Now we want to have the video because we need to have a reference, okay? We're not at the point yet where we could just kind of like look at the motion and then apply it to our animation, okay? We'll do a little bit of that in the final assignment, which is the pickup, but for this one, we're going to kind of watch and see how long things take. The reason for that is because I've seen it before. You look at an action. Let's just say someone going from here and grabbing their drink and then lifting it up. One person's going to interpret that as like 25 seconds. Another person's going to be like, that's a second and a half. So with this, there's going to be very little guessing as to what's actually happening, okay? So you're going to download the video. And let me close this. And I have that in there. Okay. And I should just download this one too, just so I have that. And then obviously we want to cut this out. We don't want to have this entire 28-minute or 20-minute video that we go by. After Effects is still trying to think about opening. Why not, right? Alright, so back in After Effects. So we're going to import. Alright, so this is 1280 by 720. The resolution doesn't matter. We just need to have it brought in. So I'm just going to drag this onto New Comp. Drag this onto New Comp. There we go. And then we're going to find our video here. So we'll wait till it fully loads. Where was that one I found right up there? Okay, so let's say that I'm going to use that kid right there. I'm going to zoom in and grab just that kid's part of this. Which obviously this video is like cutting it off. That's weird. Or maybe I'm just jumping too quick. Oh, there he goes. Okay, so I'm going to go to the beginning of this video. I'm going to Alt left bracket, and that cuts it, so it starts right there. I'm going to go to the end of the video. Right there. And you can modify it too. Like when that kid gets hit, I think I'd rather actually have him like get hit and just like wipe out. Like that's the end of the video. So I've cropped it here, so I Alt right bracketed that side, and then I'm just going to scoot this back to the beginning. Okay, so now I have this. I'm going to go to my, hit N to set my end of my work area. I'm going to go to Composition, trim my comp. And now I just have this one video inside here. Perfect. Then what I want to do is put a counter on here. We want to know like what frame things are happening at. That way we can sync it up inside of our animation. At 109, his hand is here. At 122, his hand is down there. So I want to know when those things are happening. So I'm going to create a brand new layer. Yep. I'm going to go to Effect. I'm going to go to Time. And I'm going to go to, oops, the time. No, text. Sorry, text, and then time code. There we go. So there's the time code. I'm going to switch this to frame number. And then I'm going to say composite on original. Just turn that off. Okay. So then I get the actual frame count that I could then make bigger so I don't have to like squint to see what it is. So as you put this in here, make sure it's not in the way of your animation or your character or any of that stuff. Also an important thing, make sure your character is in the entire shot, or at least most of it. If you just have like the upper half of them, it's not going to work because you're not going to be able to get the legs correctly. Alright, so that looks pretty good right there. And you'll see I'm at 173 frames, but like I said, I'll probably cut it so that right about there, he just wipes out. Just smack and he falls down. Alright, so now I'm going to make this into a movie. So I'm going to export this to my render queue, go to lossless, QuickTime, set this to H.264, and I don't really need it at this size. It's 1280 by 720. I can resize it to about half. Okay, I don't need the audio for this one, so I can just say audio off. And then what I'm going to do is also add another output module. Where was that button at? Right. There, yeah, right click on it, add output module. Okay, so what this is now I can output the actual audio file. So the reason for that is I want to bring this into Maya so that as my character is doing its thing inside the scene, that the audio is there to kind of help me line things up. Okay, it may not be perfect, but it'll be good enough for what we're doing. I'm going to set this to maybe 22 just so it's a smaller file. 16 is fine. And then I'm just going to specify my outputs here. So let's go to the desktop, P drive, 2540, character animation. And I can throw everything just outside that same character animation movie. Kid basketball. And when you do your final compilation, you want to have that audio file too. That audio file really helps seal the deal. So then we hit render. Now just so you can see what the end product will look like. Oops, hold on. We have some sort of sound in this, maybe. There's no sound. Why isn't there sound? I didn't crank it up on this thing. So that sound definitely adds something to it. Without the sound, you kind of lose the effect, okay? And you can't really underestimate the importance of that. So this jump coming from here to here took very little time. This part here, probably I spent 4 times as long just trying to get that spin to look appropriate, to get a nice smooth transition as he falls and flops over. And then even that took some doing. Alright, After Effects is done. Let's jump into Maya. I'm just going to save this. Alright, so make sure you're making a new project. Or using your old project. I have an old project. What am I making a new one for? Character set. Open. You're going to start off with your character set setup one. So for this one, I'm going to go with my character set Homer one. Remember, this is the one that has all my character sets on it. It has all my shaders set up correctly. You don't want to have to go through and have to redo this every single time. Yes. Alright, there's Homer. He's green. Just ignore that for now. And then I'm going to import my sound. So if I right click on my timeline, you'll see that there's a spot that says sound. Okay? So I need to import it. So I'm going to go to File, Import. And as long as it's playing nicely today, it should let me go to my Movies folder. Where are you at? There you are. And then go to the Kid Basketball. And then if you look inside the timeline, you'll see this bar. That's the waveform. So that's a good way to kind of see, did this work? Yes, it definitely did work. And then as I click and drag, you can hear that audio so that I know that I have actually several sources that I'm working with. One I have is my movie. That's not it. Desktop, P drive, 40, character animation, movie, kid basketball movie. If this decides to open up in anything besides QuickTime, open in QuickTime. QuickTime allows you to use the arrow keys to go back and forth. None of the other players let you do that. It's the only reason I ever use QuickTime. There we go. Okay, so now I can look at this and see and make sure everything is lined up here inside my video. And then obviously here on my timeline also. Now another thing we have to keep in mind is the frame rate. Okay, so inside of After Effects, this video here was 2997, so rounding it to 30 for what we're doing. So when I get into Maya, this has to be 30 also. If one's 24 and the other one's 30, I can play with this all day and it's never going to line up correctly. Okay? So I need to go to my little running dude on the right. I need to go to my settings and just make sure that this is set to 2997. And then I hit save. Whenever you change it from 24 to 29 or 29 to 24, it'll do this where it changes my frames to like some random numbers like 1.24. So I just reset this to 1 and 1, and I reset this to, sorry, not 1 and 1, 0 and 0, because that's where After Effects is starting it. And then this can just be whatever for now, like 180 seems like that's plenty of frames. If I go to this video here, I can actually get the very last frame, which is 173, which if I look at my waveform, is pretty close to where this thing ends. Okay, so once these things are lined up, I've done my due diligence to make sure that everything is lined up in my movie here. So this is 173 at the end of this. That's cool. This is 173 here. This is 2997 because that's the same one. Then everything's good. Now when you get a video from YouTube, it may not be the same. Your video might be different. Yours might be 150 frames. It might be 24 frames a second. Whatever. Okay? So then what I'm going to do for my rig is I'm going to look at this and try to line up all of my stuff. So I'd probably build a little prop. So I'd probably build, you know, some sort of something up there, even if it's a very simple looking basketball hoop. Keep in mind your animation is what's selling here. It's not your modeling skills. Okay? If you decide you want to come back later and remodel that, it's no big deal. You can remodel it and just swap the two items out. Don't spend a whole lot of time doing that. So I'm going to go here and say, okay, here's where the kid's coming in. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of backwards work. So right there at frame 11, the kid's kind of like squatting down. So I'm going to go up to frame 11 and I'm going to squat Homer down into that position. So I just start going into this and just start getting all of these things. And if you, this is really going to bother me. Hold on a second. Why are you green, Homer? Oh, because I'm using Mila's from Mental Ray. I thought I did RenderMan stuff. Apparently not. We're thinking about it. We're thinking about it. But when you look at these things, what you're doing is you're looking at the pose that kid is in, and you're putting your character in that pose. I'm just going to go to my shading and just say use default. That'll be easiest. And we'll turn this to legacy. Good enough. Okay. So I'm looking at the pose that this kid is in, and I'm getting my Homer rig in that same pose. Okay. So all the animation is going to be doing exactly that. Where are his hands? Where are his shoulders? Where is his spine at? Which way is he angling? So this kid looks like he's kind of in a mid-jump. So he's kind of like squatting down like that. Keep in mind that your rig may not be able to go to the full extent that your character is in, so you have to adjust for that. Homer would be holding onto a ball, so I'd probably model at least a sphere just to put that in his hand. That way I have a consistent amount of distance that he would be keeping his hands apart. Okay, so let's throw a spear in here. That's too big. There we go. So now I have something I can actually line his hands up to. Okay. So now it looks like he's actually like about to jump, right? It looks very similar to that kid's pose. His shoulders might be a little bit further down, like that. I think I grabbed his collar, not his shoulder. No, that was his shoulder. Okay. All right. Now when I set my first keyframe, I need to go to my character set. There it is. And I need to set it to the full Homer. Okay, we're not going to set the lower body and then come back and do the upper body like I did in the walk cycle. It's going to be the full character every time. So now I can hit S to set a key. and I should get 120, a lot of keyframes, okay? So then what I do is I find the extremes. I'm looking for the extreme movements of this character. So right now the kid being squatting down, that's an extreme move. I'll go forward some frames. Okay, I believe right about there is his next extreme at 20, okay? Because this is kind of like where he's forward and kind of lurching back. The next part, his hands are coming that way, okay? So I want to go to frame 20 and then put Homer in that position. So I'm going to grab his hips here, move him up a little bit. Oops. Did you go sideways, Homer? No, sideways. Like that. I'll need to move his feet up as well. Come on. Nope, I don't want that. There we go. I'm going to grab his hands and the ball. And you'll see the kid's arms are obviously way above his head. Homer's hands do not go way above his head. So the highest he's going to be able to do is like right in front of his face. But I can still arch him back. I can still take his shoulders here and pull him back. And still grab this. Push that forward a little bit more just to arch the back some. And that way I can really grab the ball here and pull it back a bit. And then his elbows, I need to look at those and rotate his elbows out. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to set another key. Now the ball is not inside my character set. So every time I set a key, the ball isn't setting anything. Okay, if I click on it, you'll see nothing's being set here. So I can add the ball into this list too, just so I have it in there. So I just go back to my animation, I go to my key, and I just say add to character set. Okay, so now I can set a key on the ball. I'll go back to frame 11 and just put the ball back where it was. Close enough. There we go. Okay, so now we're coming up. Okay, and I'm looking at this movement, trying to see if it makes sense. As he's squatting down, it looks like he's kind of like lurching backwards now. He should be kind of lurching forward. So I'm going to go to frame 20 and just give him some forward movement. So I'm going to grab all of my items here. Grab that. A little bit more forward. And set a key. So now when I come in, you can see how I'm now getting a different kind of motion. And I think maybe his hands still want to come a little bit more forward. There we go. Okay. So now we're going into this position, and then I would go back to this, and I would go to my next pose. Probably right about here, right where the kid's getting his feet on the ground. So at a frame 30, I would then go and put Homer in that pose. Then I'd find the next key pose, put Homer in that pose. And you just go one pose after the other, just setting up these key poses, okay? Looking at the walk cycle where we set up, here's the start, here's the end, and then we went in the middle and we started to fill those spots in, okay? So once I've gone through one pass and I've done my major keyframes, then I'm going to go back and I'm going to start refining each one of these areas. So like here, I really don't want Homer's legs to be bent while he's in the air like that, without his feet kind of making sense as to how he's coming off the ground. Okay? So once I've gone through my first pass, then I could come into this and say, okay, well, I really want to make sure that these feet are making more sense. So maybe I would add a little bit more of this movement in here at the beginning of this. So I go back to this pose here. Oops, sorry, that pose there. This pose here, and maybe I'm kind of straightening this. And what that does is it gives Homer just a little bit different kind of look. Maybe I want to hold him down further even. Maybe I'll just grab the feet and just keep these on the ground a little bit longer. And what that's going to do is it's going to give it more of the feel like he's actually jumping off the ground, because his feet are on the ground basically until he's stretched out. Okay? So your first pass is just those major points. Where is the major movement of the character? If his arm moves from here to there, that's a major movement. If it goes from here to there, well, we have several different spots that we want to hit. Otherwise, the arm's just going to do this like weird thing. Okay? And there's a lot of little subtleties too you really have to pay attention to. Like right here, after he gets, you know, he misses the ball, like that pose right there is going to be a cool one to do. And then he turns around. Look how long his arm is still touching that wall, right? We need to make sure his arms touches that wall just as long. And then as he kind of like waddles around with a big smile on his face, and then here comes the thing. And then there's the other one. Right when he gets hit, his arm's flying up in the air, right? So that's what I want to have my Homer guy do too, is his arms fly in the air and then he just falls down. Okay? So that's going to be the same process over and over and over again for this entire thing. Go through one pass, nice and easy. Go through the second pass, start to refine those first passes, and then adding in the secondary passes. You may come back and go through this 3, 4, 5 times if you have time. Okay? We have 2 weeks, so if you go through the first pass in one class, then you come back to the second class and do another pass, and then another class you go through another pass, that would be good. Okay? 3 passes is probably about as far as you're going to be able to do this one. And then once you're done, then you render it out, just like we rendered out everything else. And then you'll put it back in After Effects, add your audio in there, because you still should have your audio. So you'll go through your rendered animation, you'll go through your audio, put them together, render it out. You should end up with a nice little movie like... That's not it. Wrong folder. Oh, I closed it. Never mind. You'll end up with a nice animation like the fail video that you saw before. There you go. This was a play blast I did. All right, cool. Any questions?